Hello everybody, this is Dr. Cole. It's late Sunday evening, January 21st, and we now enter in week 2 of Political Science 1013 for the spring 2024 term. Everybody, you'll be looking at this message, I presume, Monday morning the 22nd. That will be the first day of 2 days we've set aside for discussion number 1. It'll be open for 48 hours. You've been asked to look at 2 articles to be accessed online and then discuss whether your attitudes match the attitudes of the voters who were interviewed for these 2 articles. Both of the articles speculate about the attitudes of young voters entering the 2024 presidential election campaign. So take a look at what they have to say, see what you think. Post once, and then post again before the 48-hour period is ended in response to at least one of your classmates. You may post more than twice if you wish, but please post at least twice. One initial post, and then once in response to one of your classmates, at least once. Okay. All right. Continuing to look at the Unit 1 class notes, talking about the second half of that set of notes, largely is about turnout and vote choice. Voting in elections, turnout and vote choice. Now there's 2 separate questions here we have to recognize. Vote choice, whether you're going to vote Republican or Democratic for Trump or Biden, for instance, is an important question, but before one makes the vote choice, one has to decide whether to turn out to vote or not. And it turns out some people turn out regularly and others do not. And those are not necessarily the same types of people. So turnout is a very important question before we even get to vote choice. So look at that very carefully as we move from turnout to vote choice. Now when it comes to vote choice, one's party identification is very important, whether you identify as a Republican or a Democrat. But there are other things that can influence the vote choice. And voters don't always vote their party. Sometimes they cross over to vote for an attractive candidate from the other party. Okay, so we discussed both turnout and vote choice in those class notes. Everybody, let me say a few words about ongoing events. The Iowa caucuses are almost a week ago now. President Trump got a majority, former President Trump, with Governor DeSantis and former Governor Nikki Haley running 2nd and 3rd respectively, each with about 1/5 of the vote. Now, with the New Hampshire primary coming up Tuesday, we hear that Governor DeSantis now has dropped out of the race, leaving really only former President Trump and former Governor Nikki Haley. Okay. It's been speculated that Nikki Haley may run strong in New Hampshire because independents and Democrats are allowed to vote in that party's primary, okay, in the New Hampshire primary. So that's perhaps her best chance to knock off Trump. But it's thought to be somewhat unlikely that that will happen, although she may run stronger there than in other states because of the way the New Hampshire primary is set up. There is also a Democratic primary in New Hampshire. The Democrats did not want New Hampshire to go first. People in the Democratic Party have objected to the traditional calendar in which Iowa and New Hampshire are the first events. They wanted South Carolina to go first. But New Hampshire state law required it to hold a primary before any other state did. So the Democrats said that under those circumstances, no Democrat who entered the New Hampshire primary could receive delegates, which now means if you want to vote for Biden in the New Hampshire Democratic primary, you have to cast a write-in vote. His name won't be on the ballot. So we'll see what will happen there. He has a couple of opponents who are not especially well-known or well-funded. If they do surprisingly well, it could damage President Biden, but he's expected to get a substantial percentage of the vote, even though people have to vote for him as a write-in. So we will see what happens Tuesday night in the New Hampshire primary, especially now that Governor DeSantis has dropped out. If former President Trump wins, it's thought that he might be able to wrap up the nomination by March, by Super Tuesday in March, when many states will be having primaries all on the same date. And it's thought that maybe Trump on that evening will be able to have collected enough delegates that he would clinch the nomination at the conventions to come this summer. So we'll see if that happens or not. If so, people are saying in the press that we're then looking at an 8-month general election campaign from March to November. So we'll see whether that happens or not. Also, everybody, as we move to the end of the course in April and May, we'll be doing our unit on Congress. And one thing I plan to discuss is the difficulty we've had in recent years getting a budget passed on time. Now, the fiscal year begins on October 1st for the federal government. So the idea is to get a regular budget passed in time to begin the fiscal year. It should be passed by October 1st. But for quite a few years now, we've missed that deadline. We've had to pass a number of stopgap spending bills called continuing resolutions rather than passing a proper budget. And we're in the middle of that type of situation again. We just had a temporary spending bill passed. We were looking at a government shutdown sometime this month or next because some departments of the government were funded through January 19th and others through just after the first of the month in February. We have now extended that to March 1st and March 8th. They divided the budget up and extended some of it to March 1st and some to March 8th. So we may have another crisis once again when we get to March, and we'll be looking at a possible government shutdown if some type of spending bill is not passed by March 1st for some parts of the government and March 8th for others. This has been going on for several months now, and has been typical of the budget process the past decade or two. Congress is so bitterly divided, politically speaking, they've had difficulty coming to an agreement on what to do about spending. And parties are divided among themselves. The Republicans are not completely divided. That's what contributed to the deposing of Speaker Kevin McCarthy a few months ago that students may have heard about, which we plan to discuss when we get to that unit on Congress at the end of the term. But be aware, a short-term spending bill has been passed. The budget really was supposed to have been passed back on October 1st. But we now have a spending bill that's been passed to extend the funding of the government through March. And at that point, once again, we may be looking at a government shutdown if we're not able to get another spending bill passed at that point. So that's what's been going on, some of the big news that's been made over the past week or so. We'll try to touch on things like that as we go along over the course of the term. But I do hope you will take part tomorrow, Monday, and Tuesday for 48 hours in discussion 1. Once that is over, we will get an assignment out for a second discussion to be held before our first exam coming up on February 9th. So do take a look at the reading and please take part in the discussion, and we'll talk to you once again about a week from now at this time.